Yuki was the first to move. With absolute confidence in his immunity to magic and skills, he fearlessly launched a kick at Gi. His kick was sharp, heavy, and combined with a feint. At first, his foot was closing in to sweep Gi's legs, before jerking upward to land a clean uppercut. Despite Yuki being the one to land a devastating kick, he ended up scrunching his face. "Just how built are you?" he grumbled with a click of the tongue. His anti-skill was invincible and could penetrate all of his enemy's defense. Yet, Gi stood still, unaffected by Yuki's hit. It was as if he didn't feel any pain at all. He had done no trickery whatsoever. Gi's body was simply harder than diamond. Being both tough and flexible, little could stand in his way. That neatly described just how powerful Gi was. "Hahaha, that tickled. I'd hardly call this a fight. Entertain me more, or I'll kill everyone here." Gi laughed as he ignited a small flame in his palm. It was the elemental magic napalm bursted jet of flames that took the shape of a dragon, diving at his target with its long and narrow body. Its goal was to relentlessly attack the target until they were toasted. Burning at several thousand degrees, any normal man would become charcoal in an instant. This flame dragon closed in on Yuki. "It's a waste of effort," Yuki shouted. "Magic doesn't work on me." He was about to take another careless swing at Gi when suddenly a shiver ran down his spine, and he jumped away. "Ho, your instincts are quite sharp," Gi said with a smile. Yuki had no time to retort, as he had thrown himself on the ground and was rolling around, trying to quell the flames. Without a doubt, the effective anti-skill prevented Yuki from getting harmed by Gi's magic. However, at the same time, the supposedly nullified magical flame was still burning. It didn't behave like a typical magical flame. This one burnt oxygen, depriving it from the air. A tad too slow, and Yuki would likely have suffocated. Although it felt like a long time, it all happened in the span of just a few seconds, meaning Yuki got off without getting hurt. Had he not noticed the depleting oxygen, he would have continued attacking Gi and definitely tasted defeat. Having realized this in time, he opted to extinguish the fire, despite it making him look like a buffoon. And from Gi's reaction, a daunting thought settled in Yuki's mind. Well, he didn't want to admit it, he had to be sure. Without necessarily expecting Gi to give him an answer, he took a chance and asked while standing up. "Why didn't you attack me again? Are you actually trying to fight me fair and square?" "Ahahaha, don't play dumb. Surely you have realized by now that I have already discovered the secret behind your power." As I suspected, Yuki thought bitterly. His anti-skill was versatile and could cancel any form of power it encountered, but when it was used against arts, which were made by fusing magic and this skill, he could not nullify both of them at the same time. That was its only flaw, his only weakness. All physical enhancements aside, Yuki was still human. Even if he could fight toxins with antibodies, he could not live without oxygen. The weaknesses of his humanity, Yuki now realized, put him at a disadvantage. Gi stood there casually. "I know someone who can cancel out magic perfectly, but I would still win in a fight. That's because they couldn't cancel anything other than magic. As far as I know, there is no way to completely defend against the laws of physics in this world. When you specialize in one thing, you'll be vulnerable to another. But you don't only seem to be able to counter magic, but skills as well." Gi, looking down on Yuki, revealed his thoughts without attacking any further. His lax attitude was all calculated. It would have been easy for Gi to kill Yuki outright, but that wouldn't have been fun. Instead, Gi wanted to destroy Yuki's confidence first, and then watch him admit defeat in despair. He had figured out Yuki's physical constitution when Yuki first attacked. Gi had already seen through his quirk. He even planned a counter for it. So what if Yuki was able to cancel magic and skills? As long as he was human, it would be a piece of cake to beat him. Humans are fragile. Their frail bodies had plenty of weaknesses to exploit. Gi didn't need to think too hard to come up with various ways to kill a human. Besides, Yuki's physical abilities were far inferior to Gi. When Yuki launched his kick, Gi only left a tiny barrier as defense, but even that was too much for Yuki's kick to penetrate, leaving not even a nick. In terms of magicule capacity, comparing the two of them was almost comical. Gi's magicules could rival a true dragon, so even if Yuki cancelled his magic, he could immediately recast it without a hitch. "If I just wanted to kill you, then I wouldn't have come here myself. Now since I'm here, you'd better amuse me," Gi provoked Yuki, arrogant as he stood over him. He wanted to make Yuki desperate enough to go all out. And then he would probably beat him to a pulp. Yuki had painfully figured out what Gi was planning, but he couldn't muster a retort. His remaining confidence disappeared from his face. He started analyzing the situation, desperately trying to figure out a way to get through this. His genius brain had come to the conclusion that the gap in power was light years across, but Yuki was not going to give up. He was searching for all possibilities. The only ray of hope he could grasp onto was that Gi was underestimating them. I can't fault him for looking down on me when he really is leagues ahead. But as it stands, he's a bit too cocky. Yuki had other trump cards. They were the superpower he was born with, as well as the greed he had taken from Maribel. In addition, he had his creator, which could create whatever skill he required for the situation. Using creator could help him overcome this disaster. "You regret that you didn't kill me when you had the chance." Steadying his breath, Yuki faced Gi again. "Don't get cocky just because I've shown a fraction of my power." He wasn't being a sore loser, he meant it. If he could make his opponent angry, he would lose composure and make mistakes. That was his plan. As he spoke, Yuki allowed his power to surge through his body. He now used a power he usually suppressed, concentrating his mind on a singular task, to remodel his body to fit his will. He evolved from a human to a sage, and then once more to become a saint. He evolved to a form surpassing Hinata herself, and ceased to breathe. A fully evolved saint was equal to a spiritual life form. While Hinata was still being limited by her body, Yuki had reached a higher plane of existence. Now, he had overcome the need to breathe at all. He cast out the weaknesses of humanity and greatly elevated his existence. If he were to convert all his energy into magicules, he could rival Leon and Luminous. Yet, Gi was not fazed by this either. "How disappointing. Is that all you're capable of? You won't be able to win against me, even if we fought 1,000,000 times over," he said dismissively, nonchalant as always. "Perhaps. In that case, I'll do my best to entertain you." Yuki's proclamation kicked off the battle anew. A second later, Yuki learned why Gi was regarded as the strongest demon lord. The scene was desperate. Yuki was lying on the ground, physically outmatched. Against Gi's overwhelming strength, none of Yuki's attacks worked. It was no use trying any more tricks. Not even his strongest, most polished attack could leave a scratch on Gi. Damn it all. Yuki didn't have the strength to even get up again. The most he could do was curse at Gi. At this point his prevailing resilience was praiseworthy. Laplace's eyes were glued to the battle. He could never forget what he saw unfold. This is just too wild. It ain't boss being too weak, it's Gi being out of this world. Yuki's strength exceeded Laplace's imagination. Making use of his strange power, psychokinesis, Yuki was pulling out all the stops to see what would work on Gi. He was lobbing stones, igniting fires, applying force, and releasing mental interference waves. Yet, all of this was easily countered. Even though he was using ridiculous strength, 30 times stronger than an average human, to launch attacks of speeds over 100 meters per second, his attacks were child's play to Gi. Yuki's primary way of defense, anti-skill, was no exception. It was unable to stop Gi's magic after a few hits. "That wouldn't work on me anymore," Gi taunted. It appeared that he had figured out how to counter anti-skill somehow. That was a horrifying fact. Kazalum and Clayman had mentioned the 10 great demon lords in the past. They had emphasized that Gi and Milim were particularly strong, but this vast difference was unfathomable. Had they been aware of it sooner, they would never have agreed to the naive ambition of conquering the world. So this is the power of a catastrophe class. Laplace had finally learned his place in the food chain, and that he should avoid those at the top. He had always chosen to hide his true strength from even his closest companions, yet against a demon lord like Gi, he wouldn't have even made a scratch. Gi was on a whole other plane of existence compared to them. Laplace couldn't even spot an opening for an attack. Even Yuki, who was certainly stronger than him, was lying helplessly on the ground like a baby. With how things had developed, it'd be easier to travel to space than to come out of this alive. Someone has to make a sacrifice. Laplace made up his mind. He put on his usual half-hearted attitude and stepped in front of Gi. "Magnificent, Demon Lord Gi-sama. We, the Moderate Clown Troupe, are open to any business requests. Currently, we are already employed by Yuki over there. Since our boss is lost now, we may logically consider our contract terminated." "Huh. Laplace, what do you say?" Laplace put on a front of betrayal, pretending to betray his companions, though rather flippantly. He didn't know what Gi's personality was exactly, but heard he was remarkably selfish and arrogant. He seemed completely uninterested in the weak. Unless he recognized you, you were not permitted to speak with him. Laplace approaching Gi with this attitude was flirting with death. But at the same time, it also meant that he had Gi's attention. This could give Yuki just enough time to make his escape. Laplace made his gamble. Never betray your companions and never betray your client. That was the golden rule of the Moderate Clown Troupe. That's why Laplace thought Yuki would for sure be able to pick up on his unspoken plan. Footman was too much of a loose cannon and not the sharpest tool in the shed. But he was also very thoughtful of his companions. Tyr was actually stronger than Clayman, yet she was too timid to show her true ability. And even though both of them had the bad habit of getting over their heads sometimes, they worked fine under Yuki. It was because of this that Laplace decided to sacrifice himself. "I'm sure I'd be of help to Gi-sama. So what do you say, at least spare me my life?" Laplace shamelessly declared in open treachery. Footman and Tyr were in utter confusion, while Gi looked on with curiosity, as the edges of his mouth slowly widened into a grin. "Great, I just have to keep this up, and Gi will surely be pissed off." Laplace didn't plan to dig his own grave, either. There was little hope with Gi as your opponent, but he still had a slim chance of saving his life. That's why he wasn't going to hesitate anymore and decided to finish his sentence. But just before he could say it out loud. Haha, don't push yourself like that, Laplace. Seriously, am I really that unreliable? Someone spoke before Laplace. It was Yuki, shakily standing up. Yuki braced himself for his own death. At this moment, his heart filled with unquenchable resentment. He was angry at his own powerlessness. He was even angrier when he heard what Laplace said. Yuki had managed to interpret Laplace's words correctly. Laplace would never betray him. In other words, what he had said was all an act. Even when Yuki was in such a sorry state, Laplace still chose to have faith in him. His mind was swirling with joy, but also guilt. If only I had more power. Realistically, nobody would be there to respond to his desperate thought. Yet at that moment, something spoke inside Yuki's mind. You want power. You need my help. Yuki was baffled. He thought he might have been hallucinating from the exhaustion, but the voice definitely sounded real. Just trade places with me. You will obtain the strongest power. Your wish is to conquer the world. Taking my help will make it a cakewalk. Come on, make your decision. The strange voice's proposition irritated Yuki. Shut up. I am me. It may be different from borrowing the strength of my companions, but I wouldn't stoop so low as to borrow a stranger's power to fulfill my ambition. Yuki was confident in his choice to reject the offer. After all, going after a personal ambition would only be meaningful if it were achieved without outside help. Yuki had his principles, too. The voice fell silent, seemingly confused about his unexpected response. Changing gears, Yuki quickly brought his mind back to the situation at hand, disregarding the voice he could no longer hear. Even though the situation had become desperate, something caught Yuki's attention. He realized that Gi must have had some goal. Indeed, while Gi likely wanted to engage in battle, there must be some other reason. He said something along the lines of, I don't want Rudra to gain more strength. In other words, if he would not go into the Eastern Empire and assist Rudra, Gi wouldn't need to kill Yuki and his companions. At least, that's how Yuki interpreted it. So, then why didn't Gi kill Yuki immediately? Seriously, toe-to-toe, I have no chance against him. My next play is a battle of wits. But instead of Laplace offering to take the fall, this will have a better chance of succeeding. Yuki regained his confidence and stood up once more.